mixed up today. Oh, women, look at you. I like this. Women rule.
That's it. I needed 4 women on the final session to keep me in line.
I thought you were going to say to bring a crowd in.
Well, there is that, but I didn't want to be crude. That's not like me.
No, not at all.
Watch my water, don't put anything in it. Okay.
Oh, I thought that was my water. I thought you were pouring a water for us.
I showed it. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. How are you all doing? It's the end of World Travel Market. Goodness. Hope your feet are feeling better than mine. I feel like I'm going to have to amputate them at the end of this. So we're going to get started now. And this is sales and marketing tools for travel bloggers. So this is really for people who are blogging at the moment or wanting to blog or wanting to take their blogging to the next level. Some of it's going to be applicable, of course, for the travel industry or people who want to maybe use this for a corporate blog. But this session was specifically designed just to really help travel bloggers that little bit more, okay? If you don't know me already, I'm Oliver Gradwell, and I feel like there's an echo because I've said it about 17 times this week. And I'm the managing director and founder of Travel Bloggers Unite. I've been doing it for a few years now. This is the 3rd show that I've been working consecutively World Travel Market, and I've been curating the sessions this week. And so today I've invited an expert panel of people from across the travel industry who are going to talk to you about their ideas and their thoughts and their experiences of really how travel bloggers can sell and market themselves that little bit better. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the panel to ask them to introduce themselves, please.
Sure. My name is Laurel Robbins. I'm a travel blogger at Monkeys and Mountains, which I've had for over 3.5 years, a social media consultant, and I'm also the board member for the Professional Travel Bloggers Unite, I'm giving you publicity, Professional Travel Bloggers Association. We're a nonprofit association, and we aim to connect travel bloggers in the travel industry.
Do you have a top tip, perhaps, for bloggers who are wanting to maybe sell themselves for the first time, just quickly?
Sure. My top tip would be consistency. Everybody says, I'm on Facebook, I blog, or I'm on Twitter, but my top tip would be to do it consistently.
Thank you. Claudia?
My name is Claudia Sally, and I am a Brazilian travel blogger. I actually live in U.S., but I write in Portuguese. And I'm also the founder of the rbbv.com.br. That is a group of almost 400 travel bloggers. And I've been blogging about 3.5 years. And I also do consulting on social media and content management.
Do you have a top tip from your experiences, perhaps?
One of my top tips is build your brand very carefully. Know who you are and the way that you like to travel, and be very faithful to that brand. Like if you are a budget travel, be faithful to that brand. If you are a luxury travel, be faithful to that brand, and build that very carefully.
Thank you. Helen?
Hi, I'm Helen. I'm from 4BGB. We're a travel PR company, part of 4 Communications. We represent over 50 travel brands and work very closely with travel bloggers. So I think my top tip would be kind of echoing what's already been said, but to really know who your audience is.
Thank you. Julie?
My name is Julie Falconer. I am the blogger at A Lady in London, which is a global travel blog, despite the name. I've been running the blog for 6 years, and I also speak and lecture about blogging and social media. I do blogger outreach consulting, and I also do travel planning for clients.
Thank you. What I'd like this session to be is as interactive as possible, so if anybody's got any questions throughout, please feel free to stick your hand up, or if you're like the lady at the front, I may come to you with a question a little bit later. Now, Helen, from the beginning, can you just talk to us, please, about your experiences of working with travel bloggers, and as a PR agency, how can you advise them to maybe work with the travel industry and approach yourselves in a more coherent, more efficient manner?
I think for us, and I think what a lot of people tend to forget, is that we work for our clients, and our clients obviously are very commercially focused. So whenever we are recommending to a client that they should work with a particular person, whether that be a travel blogger, whether that be a travel journalist, they want to know what their return on investment is going to be. And we have to basically act as the middleman, the salesperson, as it were, to demonstrate that whatever their investment in that person is actually going to guarantee some return. And I think people tend to forget also that when a client of ours is sending somebody away, whether it's on a commercial basis or a non-commercial basis, they are still having to, they're still having to pay for that trip. It is still taking money out of their budget, even if it's in kind. So it's very, very important for us always, even more so now than it has ever been before, to demonstrate that ROI. So it's being very clear in what you can offer and how you fit with that brand.
What sort of things do you look for then? Is there a way that people can present information that makes it easy for you to do your job, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, the clearer you can present the information, the better. So we're looking for exactly what you can deliver, whether that be in terms of, how many people are reading your blog, how many tweets you're going to do, whether you're going to put that up on Facebook, and then to be able to demonstrate after a project, to be able to deliver some kind of report is also very important.
What sort of report would that be? What would consist of that report?
Well, generally looking at the results, how many people we've reached through whatever channels, it's very important for us to be able to monitor that.
So perhaps keeping a record of all the Facebook posts you've done, or the likes, or the shares. Would you want screenshots?
All of that.
Things?
The more you can give us, the better. Yeah, it's really important.
Well, when you've worked with brands in your capacity as a blogger, what sort of things do you provide? And maybe from the beginning, how did you start to sell and market yourself that little bit better?
Sure. I think to start, when you're just starting, I think you need to start small. If nobody knows who you are and you don't quite have the numbers yet, you're not going to be able to get a free trip to South Africa. It'd be great if it worked like that. It doesn't. And so I encourage people to work smaller. Maybe there's a 2-hour tour that you can start. So start with that. Provide them with stats. I have a little Excel spreadsheet that I do, and I always follow up. That's really, really important. I'm surprised at how many people don't follow up afterwards, but people say, wow, you followed up. Thank you. We really appreciate that. And then get a testimonial, because then you can take that and then you can build from that and go on to your next client. And then that's how you can start building and build the relationship with the PRs and also the company that you've worked with. Just because you've worked with them once doesn't mean you can't work with them again, but you just have to get creative and think, how could we work together in a different way?
Thank you. Claudia, and what about yourself?
The first thing that I do is, if I have a relationship already, because a lot of things will happen only after you have the relationship. If I have the relationship already, it's much easier, but if I don't, I will present myself. There's always the introduction email, and that I basically talk to them about who am I, who is my core audience, what are my numbers, what is my niche, what about their destination or their product or their clients that interest me. So I have a clear plan. It's like you are presenting, it's like your business plan for that particular thing. So you have to be very clear in what you need from them. Because sometimes if you just say like, oh, I'm a travel blogger and I just want to go to your place, is not enough. You got to do some research and say like, what do they have that would be a good fit for your blog? So usually that's what I do. I do a lot of research, and usually when I'm approaching them, I know already what is going to be, that I'm going to be doing in their place. So I include, I would like to have this and this is what you're going to get in return. And I show them, usually if I'm like pitching a hotel or something, I will show them like a good example of, how did I work before with another hotel and what people are saying. One very important thing that I always keep is when I get tweets, like if I'm in a trip or if I am visiting a hotel and someone replies or says something about it that is positive, that can help that case later on, is like if it's a feedback, I will actually put that. So that's what happened in the last trip. There was one case where I recommended like a restaurant, and I was, just tweeting live and tweeting my pictures, and someone favored that tweet, and they went to that restaurant few weeks later, and they said, I'm asking for the same food. And I was like, oh my God, I hope it's good. I hope they like it. And then they tweeted me back saying like, oh, we really asked for that, and it was really good. So that's a good feedback for you to have in your own media kit.
Does that happen a lot?
It has, because, we build a following. It gets, after a while, you have a lot of people that follow you, and some that will take, and especially with Brazilians, that they really like to follow like the step by step of what you did. So I get a lot of people saying, like, I went to those same places that you went. It's kind of scary because you have to be very careful. But I make sure that I always say, this is my experience, this is the way I travel, and I'm always very true about what I post. This is another very important thing, because you cannot fake it. If you do and you say, oh, this is amazing, and someone is going to go there, and it's not amazing, you're going to be in trouble.
But I suppose it's also objective as well, isn't it? You know, maybe it's not good weather, and maybe you don't enjoy it as much. I mean,
that is always the case. I mean, I always say that, some people go to places and they say, like, oh, I really didn't like it. But before I write anything, I was like, did that happen to me because I was not in a good mood that day, so I'll give that another chance before I write?
Yep. Do you think your background in work then sort of helps you to sell and market yourself that little bit better?
Excuse me?
Do you think your professional background outside of travel blogging helps you to sell and market yourself better?
Well, it does. My background started with IT, and I worked with bloggers for many times for companies, and it's always adding up. I mean, you can always use whatever you are doing now. I mean, we have travel bloggers that are photographers, that are that worked in marketing, and they worked in sales. I think you can use your skills to add to your travel blogging experience. So you just use that as, to me, social media and content management was always something that I did, so it really helped me.
Julie, I know we've worked together in the past on a couple of panels, so I'm familiar with your background and the work you've done, but could you perhaps explain where you started from and the sort of lessons that you implemented and the tools that you implemented to get to the stage that you're at today?
Sure. I started out my career in banking. So I was at Goldman Sachs, the evil empire, for several years, and then went to a hedge fund. And while that may not seem to have a lot to do with travel blogging, it actually brought a lot of analytical experience to my blogging business. And I think that's something that's really important for us as bloggers, whether it's for our marketing purposes, whether it's for our accounting purposes, whether it's for anything that we're doing, is really being analytical about the way that we look at our business. It's all well and good to provide some nice content, great photos, video, what have you, but if we're not thinking commercially about our business and we're not thinking analytically about where our traffic is coming from, about how we are monetizing our business, whether we're doing that in the most optimal way that we can, we're obviously going to be missing out on something. And obviously not every blogger wants to monetize their blog, not every blogger has the same goal, but whatever your goal is, you can use some sort of analytical resources to help you get to where you want to go. And that's something that I started doing quite early on when I started my blog back in 2007, and it has really, really helped me, whether it be A/B testing for different formats, whether it be testing different ad platforms, what have you. It's really been powerful for me to optimize and make my blog as good as it can be, and then that, in turn, helps me market the blog better, helps me provide better experience for the partners that I partner with, whether it be tourism boards, whether it be hotels, whether it be anybody else that I work with.
Thank you. Is there a particular strategy that anyone on the panel who's a blogger puts in place when you're trying to sell yourself? Is there anything you think, I really want to highlight this? Or do you take a different approach to every single opportunity? How do you do it? Laurel?
I think it's really important to do the research before. So not you can't say, okay, they're a DMO, I've worked with DMOs in the past, because every DMO will have their own goals and objectives. And it's really important, I think, to do your research to say, how could I approach them uniquely? Because keeping in mind, they're being approached probably by hundreds of bloggers a year as well. And so I think it's important to do your research and say, how can I fit in with that? And when you're meeting with them, asking them questions. What are you working on this year? What's important to you? And see how you can fit in with that, and then target your approach according to their needs.
So not using a template approach or a copy and paste, change the name in the email. Maybe forget you'd send it to the wrong person because I might have done that before. Okay. Claudia?
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand what are they doing. And like for me, for instance, because I write specifically for the Brazilian market, it's very important to me to approach people that are interested in that market. Because if they are not interested in Brazilians, they want nothing to do with me. And there is a lot of cases that I started the research. I would love to go to this place, but then they don't have interest in the market. So you have to be very, and they are not going to invest the money on it. So it's very important for you to, and it's part of your brand. So if you understand your market, so to me right now, I keep an eye on different reports they are talking about, like, for instance, in this, at WTM, they had a report talking about how some of the companies are, investing more on the Brazilian market and which countries are doing that. So I'm always keeping an eye on that, because then I know that there's an opportunity there for me to work with. So you got to be smart, not only, so one of the tools, and nowadays with social media, it's very important to keep an eye not only on the news about blogging, but the tourism in general. So like broaden your mind and keep an eye on things that can work. If you are working with family travel, if you are working with budget travel, so keep an eye on the trends on that particular place or trend.
I understand. Helen, when you win a new client, do you make an announcement or a press release about that? Would you distribute that, or how would somebody know that an agency like yourself has a new client that may be looking to market themselves in a certain way?
Yeah, I mean, when we win new business, we will put out a press release that's generally to the marketing press. It's not something that consumer media would be at all interested in. Mm-hmm. So within the industry, yes, we would put out a press release to say that we'd won a piece of business.
So in terms of approaching your agency or a specific agency, would people maybe approach you with a blanket approach? Or if they were trying to target a particular destination, how would they know to approach which agency?
Well, I mean, most agencies have their own websites, and on our websites we have our client lists. Mm-hmm. I would say 99.9% of agencies should have their client list up there. So I think it goes back to what everybody else has been saying, that if we're going to be approached by a travel blogger or by a journalist, you want a tailored pitch. You want something that is absolutely relevant to that particular client, because for us as well as, we still have clients that there is a certain degree of skepticism out there in terms of working with bloggers. Should they, shouldn't they? For a lot of them, it's still relatively new. So we have to be able to demonstrate, as I said before, that there is going to be some return on investment, and, to be able to demonstrate that working with a particular individual is going to generate some kind of results.
I think as well, maybe sometimes if I don't know which PR agency to approach, I'll just Google. So I'll Google, just picking it out of the air here, Nevada Tourism Board, UK office. And sometimes that will then throw up with the contact details, and often on the website you can find a press section. So it's not necessarily the public section. You'll come across the consumer, hey, travel to Nevada type section first. But then if you go into the business side, or if you look at the contacts page, you can then often find who is the actual media relation in your country. That's something that I've used in the past. Are there any travel bloggers here in the room who attended our advice clinics on Google Hangouts? And stick your hand up really, 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 really high. It's about 4 of you, about 8 of you, fantastic. So some of the advice, just quickly, the tips that I gave was, when you're selling yourself and when you're introducing yourself, is just keep it really simple. You can talk and talk and talk and talk, but you're not doing a presentation or a talk like I am today and somebody's not met you before. I would do your research if you can, if it's that situation. But I would just introduce yourself as professionally and as simply and as coherently and as positively as possible, and ask questions about what they're looking for and their priorities, because whether you do videos or whether you do photos or ebooks or just writing, maybe what you do doesn't apply directly to them. And so, of course, if you approach somebody like Helen, or if you're working on a blogger project, you need to be flexible, and you're only going to find out the client's needs if you ask lots of questions. Julie, you've done a few different projects. Would you say that that's reasonable? I mean, when you've done your consulting and your webinars, is that the sort of thing that you've come across?
Absolutely. I think that that's something that I see quite a lot across different projects. I run webinars through my blog about blogging and social media, and I see that quite a lot as well. Okay, good.
Are there any questions from the floor at this stage? Could the people with the mic stand up and come for a bit of a jog? Is there only one of you at the moment? Okay, looks like it. Do you need me to stay here for the video, or can I run around as well? Do you need me to stay here for the video, or can I run around as well? Okay, thanks. I won't be very fast, don't worry. Oh, you will at the speed I run. Thank you. Ma'am, what was your question, please?
Yes, my name is Eva Meijer, and I'm setting up an online travel magazine for the Dutch market with a few bloggers. Professionally, I'm really new in this world, but I've been traveling a lot myself, and know that it's not always, you don't always have a good experience. I was wondering, like, if you are on a sponsored trip and you have a bad experience, or you have the feeling that you may be getting like being treated as your queen, but the other guests are not, like, how do you deal with that?
Who would like to take that question first?
I'll take. There are two things that I do that minimize that. One is I'm very picky and careful with what I do and what trips I accept. If they are not going to be tailored to, you know, my audience, I don't take it. Like, usually, and it's always the advice, like I have a lot of blogger friends, and they are budget travelers, and then they go like all happy to stay in 5-star hotels. But at the end, I was like, that doesn't make any sense for your audience. So I do affordable luxury, and I usually don't do anything that I think it's not going to be fitting. So I'm very careful. I ask the questions, where are we going to stay, and I will do the research, because today, if you know the hotels where you're going to stay, you can just research them online, and I get all that information. The second thing to minimize this is if I decide, like, I said a lot of no's before because it usually was not a good fit for me. And I totally forgot my second one. Someone can take it now, and I'll try again.
Do you want to take that one on, Laura?
Yeah, I would love to jump in because I've been in an apartment since Sunday, and we've had cold water. I've not had a hot shower since Sunday. And it's a luxury apartment building, so it's on brand, like Claudia said. You can minimize this happening, but I didn't know there was no cold water. But given that it is now on Thursday, I will write all the positive things. It's a really nice apartment, but I do have to mention that. It's not fair to my readers not to mention that there wasn't. Had they been able to fix it after one day, I might not have mentioned it, because I would have said, look, there were a few little problems, but they managed to fix it. But when I've had a shower every day, or a really, really cold shower every day, then it's only fair to your readers to mention that, because it's really important to be trustworthy. But I'm not going to trash the place. I'm not going to say, never stay here, it was terrible, because there's a lot of really positive things, but it will be an honest but balanced review.
Yeah, I remember the second thing.
You got the second.
So another thing that I do to minimize is, like, sometimes when we go to these press trips, I make sure that I can do things that my readers can actually do themselves. Because what I see sometimes in a lot of these things, they prepare special things for bloggers. And like when I was in Italy, we did the blog view, and I made sure that everything that I do is like, can my readers come here and book this? So I did like a cooking class that was like a big success. And I made sure that I did in one place where someone can just send an email to them and do the same thing. Because that's important to me, because I'm not only doing the trip because, you know, I want to be like the queen of the blogs. It's at the end, it's only going to make sense to my readers, to the client, if they can connect together. If I do something that nobody else can do, it doesn't serve to my purpose. So that's my approach to minimize. I have been very lucky so far. I mean, I'm just blogging for 3 years and a half, and I can't remember like a really, really bad experience. But as she said, usually sometimes it's not like, I always mention like, I wish there was like a free Wi-Fi, or what can this place have to be better? So, but that's as far as I went.
Julie, before I turn it over to Helen, have you got anything else to add?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think a few things. One, it's really important to be objective. If you're going to say that something was bad, say why. Don't just put some emotion, I hated it, it was awful, this is, you know, it's the worst trip I've ever taken, because you're not really telling people why. If you're objective about it, this happened, and this happened, then A, people know exactly why you didn't like it, and B, they can make a judgment call based on whether they agree with you or not as to whether that would bother them or whether it wouldn't. If a trip is completely horrible from start to finish and you just have nothing to say even remotely positive about it, what I would do is email the PR or email whoever it was that set the trip up. Again, bullet point a very objective list of things that went wrong and why they went wrong and what, how you felt about it. And then offer to still cover it because you want to uphold your end of the bargain, but say, hey, I'm happy to not write about this if you don't want me to. Most of the time PRs will understand and they'll say, that's fine, don't write about it, because they obviously don't want a completely negative review of their client. Another thing I think that is important to remember is that your opinion could be different from others' opinions. Your experience in a place could be different from others. So kind of the same thing that they touched on is to really make sure that if there's something that you've specifically experienced that you didn't like, to make sure that you state that that's your opinion, or state that you felt that way, but it's not necessarily how everybody feels. And then lastly, I would say make sure that whatever you're saying is something that either guests can replicate, like Claudia has just been saying, if somebody was reading your blog or your online magazine, that they can do the things that you did, and you're not just sort of writing articles about your glamorous life and not really adding value to people.
So Helen, from your point of view, from an agency approach, how would you like bloggers to cover the sort of, there was negativity angles? Would you like them to speak to you first or just write about it?
Yeah, I think we would expect people to behave as anyone would if you were travelling. If there's something wrong, then you need to give the either the hotel or whoever it is you're travelling with, or contact the PR, a chance to put it right. So, if you were travelling, if you'd booked a holiday and your shower wasn't working, then you would phone up and try and get it fixed. And obviously, so you need to, sometimes we are... very, very rarely we've been in the situation where we haven't heard a peep out of anybody for the whole trip, and then they come down with a whole list of things that were wrong. And I think that is a bit unfair, because, you should give people the opportunity to put it right. Obviously, if things still go wrong, then it is absolutely within your liberty to, to write about that. We wouldn't expect anybody to come back with a totally tainted review if it was not the experience they had. But I do think you've got to be realistic, and sometimes things do go wrong with the best will in the world, and you do have to give people the opportunity, as you would in any other walk of life, to put it right. But yes, if you came back and that hadn't happened and there was still a kind of list of negatives, then we would probably say, okay, don't write about it.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have a question that's really near the front, so I don't have to do a lot of running? Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Amber. I'm a travel blogger with Husband in Tow. And this is something that was mentioned in the last presentation on ROI. And Claudia, you mentioned it as well earlier about creating good relationships with the brands before you approach them. And I'm wondering, how do you do that?
World Travel Market, it's a great place to start. Here is great for networking. It's not only go to the sessions. Usually when you go to the sessions for the bloggers, some that are interested in working with bloggers will be here. Some people from the industry. Out there in the world, you gotta put yourself out there and sell yourself, basically, like bring along your media kit and talk to them, make some meetings, attend the events that happen afterwards. That's a great chance. And I have to say, a lot of people question, like when I came for the first time to WTM in 2011, why are you coming to London if you're Brazilian? And most people that will be here are only talking to the UK market. And my response was, first, there's a lot of bloggers from all over the world that I can network with them too. And a lot of projects that I got, or a lot of introductions, happen through other bloggers. Maybe they worked with an agent before, and they come to me and they say, I would like you are interested in the Brazilian market, so this is Claudia right here, you should talk to her. Or if they know that you have a specific niche, she writes about gastronomy, and someone will remember you after you see, because we see each other on Twitter all the time, but after you make this connection, this shaking hands, this is very, very important. So this is a great place to start. You are in the right place, like in the TBU sessions, right?
Thank you. No, but it's true. I mean, Helen, would you ever consider just receiving maybe general, just touching base emails from bloggers, just so they can say, please consider me for the future,
absolutely.
This is what I do?
Yeah, absolutely, because we're all trying to promote different things here, and we're always looking for different ideas to put to our clients. We're being employed to come up with creative ideas. We're being employed for our contacts. So, the more ideas and the more contacts we have, then the better it is for us as well. So, yeah, absolutely.
So maybe a media pack type PDF with case studies of things you've done in the past. Doesn't matter how big or small, but people just perhaps need to get an idea of what you've done and, then send them out to hundreds of people.
Get her card at the end of the session.
I mean, for us, really, as well, it's being able to demonstrate that, you can, as I said before, it's case studies that are really, really important, because those are what, the client will read and that's what they'll make the decision on at the end of the day.
Thank you. Julie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that working with PRs is a great way to start that relationship building process with brands. If you, depending where you are based, if you're in the UK or if you're somewhere else, figure out who the PR agencies in your city are that work with travel clients and start to get to know them and build relationships with them, because they're often the gateway to working with the client anyway. And it's much easier to build the relationship with one PR who has multiple clients than to try to go out and meet every single client individually. Obviously, if you can do that, that's amazing and great. But the PRs can act as a really nice kind of medium between you and a whole bunch of different clients, where if you have a good relationship with the PR, they can then make those introductions for you, and hopefully they'll be really nice, warm intros for you.
And usually when you go to the clients, they will or the DMOs or the companies, they will actually refer you to the PR, because that's who deals with them. So that's...
Well, we're generally employed as a gateway. So if what more often than not, we will report into a marketing manager who has kind of, many disciplines that are kind of under their jurisdiction. So they look to us to recommend whether or not they work with, whoever it may be, a blogger or a journalist.
Have you used the press releases next door? Have you considered having a look at those, or?
Yeah, I've had some luck in this category already. Which is more of a general understanding for other people in the room, because you're just talking about cultivating relationships, and sometimes I think for newer bloggers it's confusing to know where to begin.
Yes, you start with bloggers. Bloggers are, someone mentioned in the last session, bloggers are always referring to other bloggers. I refer my blogger friends from all over the world all the time, because you are talking to someone, oh, this is not a good fit for me, but it's a good fit for someone else. So your fellow bloggers are the place to start. And then you build with the PRs, attend the shows. So I think it's...
The conferences.
Conferences.
And there's more than just one. But it's true, attend the conferences and the networking events and all the things that takes place, because World Travel Market for Bloggers isn't just 6 sessions by TBU and then that's it. It's bringing you here for you to benefit. And of course, you've got the media centre, all the research opportunities, all the 5,000 exhibitors. And you've got all the 4 or 5 different networking events that have taken place for bloggers. So all those 3 different elements for around the World Travel Market Week have been really valuable.
So I was going to say, I think it's also really important not to talk about travel all the time. So get to know the person behind the PR. Just like, after today, you may actually be a little bit tired of talking about travel. I actually am tired of talking about travel, even though I never thought I would be. But we're all we're not just a travel blogger. A PR is not just a PR. So take the time to really get to know the people, because then you're showing your personality and you build that relationship on a personal level. I have one company, I've never met them. They send me a picture of a monkey on Twitter every week. And so then I started sending them pictures of gelato every week, because they really like gelato. And we will find a way to work together, because we've just taken the time, and that has nothing to do with travel or anything, but I like them already. And how do you not like people that send you pictures of monkeys? So.
Your website's Monkey and Mountains, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You're going to have a Monkey and Gelato website now?
I need to.
Was there a question at the back, please? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is George, and I'm from Crete. I actually represent the brand side of blogging, hotels. So I would like to hear some opinions about how hotels, small size, can use bloggers or be bloggers themselves, the company itself, or work with bloggers for marketing and selling their product. And since we discussed what you just said, sir, I am here and I am interested in talking to some bloggers that want to actually write about Crete. Thank you.
I've got a quick suggestion I'll introduce at the end that will perhaps help with that.
Thank you.
Who would like to take that question from George first?
I will.
Okay.
I think there's kind of two prongs to it. If you're blogging yourself as the hotel or if you're working with bloggers, and you can certainly absolutely do both. I think if you're working with bloggers, there are lots of different ways that you can work with them, and it depends on what kind of coverage you're aiming for. It depends what your goals are. It depends on a whole lot of factors. So what I always advise is that you should know exactly what your goals are first, and then from that should inform your decision about what kind of bloggers to work with, where those bloggers are based, what kind of audience those bloggers have, and really kind of dig into it from there. In terms of what you can do with working with bloggers, it can be anything as simple as hosting a blogger and they write something about your property. It can be something that's as big as a full-fledged social media campaign that goes beyond the blog and all the way out to Twitter, Facebook, etc. They can create content for your blog. They can create content for your website. There's so many different ways to work with bloggers, which is great. But again, it goes back to the goals that you have. You don't want to just approach bloggers sort of ad hoc and hope for the best. It's really the most successful partnerships tend to be the ones where you know exactly what you want. On the flip side of it, for you actually having your own blog, I think that's a great idea. It's a great way that a lot of businesses connect on a personal level with potential customers, potential guests at the hotel, and that can run the gamut. You can write the blog yourself or have internal people write it, giving updates about things going on at the hotel, behind the scenes sort of stories about people who work there or things like that. You can also, again, have the bloggers you partner with potentially writing content for your blog as well. So I think there's a lot of scope for what you can do, and that's the exciting thing with blogging is there's so much that can happen in terms of the blogging, in terms of the content. It just depends on what you want to do.
Yeah, and just to add to that, it's very important for you to define, like, what is, like right now, what do you want to do? Like, what's your target, like, country? Because you have bloggers from all over the world, so that's a big advantage. And, you know, and take advantage of bloggers that are around you or they are passing through the city where you are if you don't have a big budget to fly someone from outside. So we gave that advice in other session, and I keep repeating that because a lot of people think, oh, I have, you know, I'm targeting this market, but I have to fly this person from there. And that's the ideal situation for the blogger, but be creative. Some bloggers will be, you know, passing through your city, and you can, you know, find out, and that's a good way to start.
Thank you. Helen, when you construct press trips for your clients, and let's say it's Visit Wales, for instance, will you just work with Visit Wales, or you sort of choose different suppliers like restaurants and B&Bs? How will you?
No, absolutely. When we're working with any client, really, we would try and create a very rounded trip. So we'd work with different suppliers. So we would work with hotels and restaurant partners and attractions, and generally, obviously, make sure that trip is targeted to that particular person's interests and audience. But yeah, we would work with a range of different suppliers.
And that would be via the tourism board as perhaps a conduit?
Well, yes, for that particular client it would be, although I was going to say if we work for a hotel client, then we would kind of turn it on its head, and we would also then work with the tourist board. So as a hotel, I think it's also worth your while approaching the tourist board and seeing if they have got any trips that they're coordinating with bloggers already that you could then invite to your hotel for a couple of nights, and try and piggyback off that kind of activity as well, because that's going to save you money at the end of the day.
All right, thank you. Do we have a question at the back of the room there? Yes, sir.
Yes, you talked about Googling for contacts in various
this was me.
At various travel companies. Yep. And you also talked about potentially reaching out to the external PR agencies to get into those travel companies as a blogger. But if you go into the travel companies directly, in your experience, what are the job titles that you can get the most joy with, and what are the job titles that are just a waste of time?
Well, I personally will get the most joy with managers or directors when I'm talking to them about hosting a conference, because it's a huge spend, and I already have a relationship with the agencies like 4BGB, so I don't necessarily need to have them act as a gatekeeper. You know, I can be sort of trusted to communicate with them. But I think if you approach a tourism board directly and they see your media kit or where you're based, I think they're very, very likely to just pass you to the PR agency, not because they don't want to talk to you, but because that's for a specific job function. And from my experience, if I was a blogger, I wouldn't say don't approach people directly, but do be prepared for them to tell you to go to the PR agency, because what you may not realise, I mean, I'm just guessing, but a lot of the stands in the show floor today, they've been staffed by PR or representation agencies and not necessarily the tourism board from Nevada directly, if that makes sense. So I don't know if you've ever come across that. You may have some business cards. I mean, I've got business cards from PRs last night who I know are from a particular PR agency, but it's branded Bahamas, for example, for instance. So, yes, I would just be prepared to go to a PR agency or be directed to. Helen, would you say that was fair?
Yeah, I think most bigger companies will have if you go onto their website, they'll have a press office section, and if they do, then that's easy because that gives you the press contacts. Or go through to marketing, I would say, because quite often also working with bloggers doesn't necessarily fall within the PR camp. It could fall within the marketing, more general marketing arena. So if there's no press office section on the website, then you can't go wrong by asking for the marketing manager, because they will then put you in touch with the right person, whether it be in-house or agency.
What about the rest of the panel? I mean, in terms of when you approach partners, do you approach DMOs direct, or do you just go to the PR agency because they know you?
I think it depends on the partner, but most of the time if they have an agency they work with, I'll go with the agency. Because like a lot of us have been saying throughout the presentation, that tends to be the kind of gateway to the client anyway. And a lot of times, even if you contact the client directly, they'll just send you back to their agency anyway. So that tends to be quite a good route to go through if you don't know any other contacts directly with the company or brand that you're trying to work with.
What I do sometimes is like I go to the website, if there's nothing listed and they have like a marketing, it's a good title to go. And I'll send an email, I send the entire email, but I say, I'm not sure if you are the right person. Could you please forward this if you are not? So that's the approach that I take.
But I think just to highlight, with any cold approach to any business, and we're the same, if we're making a cold approach to a business that we want to work with, it's making sure it's relevant. Otherwise, you won't get past the gatekeeper, whoever that might be.
That's very true. Yes, so in the red top, you had a question. Can you stand up, please? Thank you.
Hi, I'm DJ from Friends of Friends Travel, and we're a startup, and so we have a fairly limited budget. But we really want to work with bloggers, and the few bloggers we've worked with have found, like, we've worked really well with them, and we really like them. But one problem we're trying to deal with is trying to incentivize bloggers to work with us because of our limited budget. So I was just wondering, as bloggers, could you tell us kind of what other incentives you would work for other than just being paid directly?
That's a tricky one. I think it really depends on the blogger. A lot of bloggers aren't going to be incentivized by anything but payment, especially professional bloggers who make a living from their blogs. It's not that we're just money hungry, it's literally that we need to pay our rent. And while our landlords might appreciate a free something every once in a while, usually they prefer cash. It's true. I'd love to offer my landlady free trips around the world in lieu of rent, but I don't think she'd like it. Yeah, so I mean, I think what I would recommend you do is really start to research blogs and bloggers that aren't necessarily financially motivated. Maybe it's bloggers who already have a full-time job and aren't trying to make money from their blogs, but their blog still is a respected publication with a wide readership and quite a lot of visits and followers, etc. They might be perfectly willing to work with you without being paid. So I think it's just a matter of finding bloggers whose goals match up with yours in terms of the economics of it.
I think that goes back to the session we had earlier on in the week about finding the right travel blogger for your brand, which, guess what, if you leave your business card, I'm going to send you all the information. And, it's all about analysing the blogger and spending time paying attention to them. And sometimes it's worth paying, even if it means only doing one trip instead of maybe 5 where you try and get them for free. Maybe that one person who you pay a little bit is going to have more of a vested interest in it. And when I say pay, I don't mean pay directly for the trip, but you understand the whole project. You know, and ultimately you want to generate sales, and perhaps that's more likely to do so. Was there a question on this side? Sir, you had your hand up? Oh, saves me walking, thank you.
Hello, I'm Brian Cox. I'm the travel blogger. I do video blogs, but back to the cold introductions. I was wondering lately, would a phone call be better than, say, an email? I guess it's more for Helen, or well, maybe the other bloggers have experience with phone call as well to see if it worked.
What do you think? How do you feel about the bloggers in this room phoning you up on Monday?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think probably an email is better because you can actually convey. You could put an attachment in there. You can put a link to something. You can actually really, visually demonstrate past results and your work and what you've done. Maybe followed up by a phone call, because I think sometimes, you have to be a bit persistent. On our side, we're exactly the same. If we're selling in a story, we have to be persistent, and you kind of start off with an email and then it's a few tactical phone calls. So yeah, I think you need to put it all down and to be able to demonstrate what you can do. But there's absolutely no reason why you can't follow up with a phone call. And if your phone call doesn't get taken, then you just try again.
For the ladies on the panel, what do you think?
I have never started with a phone call. It's usually the email. But a couple of times I had the phone, and then afterwards, it's like after a couple of days, I said, I sent you this email, and then I follow up. But I never start with a phone call. Because
if you're a video blogger, surely you can speak to a camera and then send them a link to your YouTube channel and say, come and work with me, and this is what I can do, and it saves you having to phone them, right? Do you have
also, just from a general time thing, actually, if you put everything down in an email and it's something that we read and think, oh, that actually would work really well, just from being able to then send it on to your client, if all the information is already there, you have a much better chance of it being flicked over to the client if it's relevant and if it's kind of deemed worthwhile, because it's all there already.
I just always wonder, because it's like, in this day and age, there's a lot of spam out there, so it's like, what is the click-through rate on this?
Yeah, there is. You're right, there is. And we all know that from all walks of life. So that's why I'd say send an email and then follow up with a phone call.
Be persistent.
Yeah, be persistent, absolutely.
I was going to say, I think it depends on your personality as well. Some people are very charismatic and persuasive over the phone, and if you can use that to your advantage and really leverage that asset, then great. If you get on the phone and you're a robot, then probably not a good strategy. So I think you should really play to your strengths on that one.
Well, what would you do? Do you normally phone people or knock on the door or email them? Beat them to death until they send you on the trip?
You figured me out. No, normally I send an email, because I've got one PR firm that I work with in Germany. They love to call me, and the conversation goes, hi, how are you? Do you want to go to wherever in 3 days? And I'm like, I don't know, because it kind of catches you off guard. And I kind of like what the other ladies were saying. I think it's not time efficient, because I'm like, well, I have to check the schedule. You're going to have to send me the details, what kind of a trip it is. So when you're asking me that, like if you expect an answer to that question, like right this second, I probably can't give it to you. And same thing if I'm calling a PR and said, I can't expect them to give me an answer right that second, because there's going to be things I need to think about and consider.
Do you have a video of your media kit that somebody could play and know all about you? Would you feel comfortable sort of putting up a media kit? Obviously, a media kit's quite private with your stats and your information and a little bit about you. Would you be comfortable displaying that in a bit of an animation, perhaps, online?
I put the PDF version on my website.
Okay.
So that it's about 10 megabytes. So basically, I was like, I want not to have the problem of.
Can everyone hear him? Can everyone hear his really nice voice? Okay.
Basically, I have the media kit online, so
okay.
Basically I can just share a link, opposed to, people are always weary about downloading. Also, some corporate websites have a maximum download size, so I hate to go to all this effort to write this email, and then it comes back to me saying your mail is too
Dropbox?
large. I do have Dropbox.
Somebody sends me files via Dropbox, which it's like a static folder, so that's perhaps a thought, I don't know.
You can also use Google Docs for that and put a link, and then it'll take them to a presentation or something like that.
Well, the problem with the back to the animation is that I find myself, my numbers have been for this year blowing up really hard. So I basically every month am redoing it. So I can't redo a video. It's just not time efficient to redo a video press kit every month.
Okay.
What I usually do, and happens all the time with me, is like I have the PDF version, but I send at the body of the email like a quick snapshot of the latest, like the last 30 days, for instance. So, because that keeps up to date. I said, I'm sending you the full, but it's from like last month, even from like one day to the next. I mean, we are all growing everything. So I send the latest numbers in the body of the email. So sometimes that's enough for them, and they don't even open the attachment or go to the link. But always send, like, first thing, this is a little bit about me. Put there like your main stats, the ones that really popped, and put them bold. And that sometimes...
I do that too.
I think we've got time for one more question.
Absolutely.
It's okay, I'll give you... Wait, excuse me.
Hi, I'm Jessica from travel blog Notes of Nomads. One of the first questions that we often get when we approach DMOs or brands is, where are you based? And I'm just wanting to see what your feeling is towards being location independent and whether you feel that's an advantage or a disadvantage.
I think it's what you make it. I'm based in London, but I'm American. I'm from San Francisco originally. That's a huge asset to me when a client wants to reach both the UK market and the US market. And I think you can do the same thing if you're location independent. Sell that as an asset. Have reasons, either in a media kit like we were talking about, or in an email that you can bullet point. This is why it's great to work with me being location independent. And I think no matter where you're based in the world, you can have a story as to why that is something that somebody would want to work with you on.
I think the other thing that's really important in that, and I agree with everything that Julie said, is to show where your readership is. Because when they hear location independent, I think that they kind of get, some people are like, well, where are your readers from? Are they from everywhere? And so be really clear in that, kind of like what Claudia was saying, your key stats, and say my readers are from, pick your top 3 places. So then it's very clear.
Oliver, can you actually answer this? Because I had an interesting...
Cost you £5.
I'll just join the panel at the very end. So I'm actually based in, I'll stand up. Hi. I live in Bali. That's where I'm based, but I am a full-time traveler. That's just my home base. And to answer your question, I guess I was having some problems here and at ITB Singapore with people asking me where I'm based. And when I say I'm based in Bali, they immediately want to put me in touch with their Jakarta representative. And I was like, well, I don't know that that's necessarily the best person to reach out to because I'm American. My blog is based out of the US, I travel the world, but my readership is from the UK, Australia, I also have readership in Southeast Asia, so it's sort of a weird thing. You kind of have to test out who you're speaking to about how to sort of sell yourself to that person, because I don't blog in Bahasa Indonesia, so I don't know that the Jakarta rep is the right person from a PR standpoint. So there's just something that happened to me yesterday that I thought was kind of interesting to answer that question.
I mean, we get asked that question from clients if we are recommending people they should work with. And like, but where are they from? Oh, they're from the States. But as long as you can demonstrate that you're going to resonate with the right audience, to us it makes absolutely no difference.
Silly question. This is leading on to something, but how do you find out where a blogger's audience is? Do you just use Google Analytics or a similar tool?
Well, yeah, we would rely on you to tell us, to be honest, who your audience is and who's reading your blog and what, So yeah, we would, and if we felt we needed to check that up, then we probably would. But I mean, generally, we would rely on you to tell us who's reading your blog.
So here's a suggestion for you. If you're one of many American expats that are based in Spain, and I met a couple at our conference in Porto, the challenge that they have is convincing people that they've got a lot of readers on Google Analytics from Spain. But those readers aren't Spaniards. They're Americans who want to travel, who have got disposable income, the same as the Americans in North America on Google Analytics. So obviously there's analytics, but you need to play around with the figures and find out more. And I think the best way to possibly find out more is do a reader survey. Just do a quick, simple 10-question survey, monkey survey as a start, see how you get on. Maybe ask what's your nationality and where do you live? Because if somebody's trying to reach the American audience or the Japanese audience, then If you've got 100 Japanese readers out of 200 readers and you're based in London, then that would be perfect for them. So it's not always where somebody's departing from and flying to. That may affect sometimes budget, but in terms of readership, dig a little bit further down than just looking at Google Analytics. Does that make sense?
One last thing that I would add is like play that to your advantage. If you are going to places that are nearby where you are located, because in my case, I write for Brazilians, but I'm based in the United States. So I usually sometimes when I pitch some, states in the United States, they are like, oh, but I can't fly you from Brazil. I was like, no, I'm right here. So it's easier. So same thing in Europe. We have someone here in Europe. So it's much easier for someone to host you if you are close by or if you are passing by. Then, so use that as an advantage for you.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? Nope. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to stop it there.
She's like doing this with the hand.
Do you have £10? We're overtime. Okay, cool. I'll come over here with the mic and you can just get the £10 out.
Poor thing was there like half an hour.
So this is a very final question, I'm afraid.
I'll be quick, and I've lost my voice 3 days at WTM. It's mainly for Helen. It was just to ask if you could give us an idea of what kind of numbers your clients are looking for with regards to taking a blog seriously.
Oh, I mean, that you kind of can't answer that question because it's...
Quick question? Long answer.
It's how long is a piece of string, because if it's a very specific niche product, then you might be happier with smaller numbers. If it's a very mainstream product, then you want much bigger numbers. So you can't really answer that question. I mean, the key question is if you have a reasonable size audience that is relevant, then it's something that would be deemed worthwhile. But in terms of there is no standard figure as to how many people should be you can be targeting. It's just, I think the key is relevance more than anything.
Engagement as well, perhaps.
Yeah,
so if somebody's got low numbers but high engagement and can demonstrate a past return.
Yeah, absolutely.
So were you here on Tuesday or Wednesday? I forget the days now. Were you in any of the previous sessions? Okay, so very quickly, there's a blogger who came to our conference in Rotterdam, met a PR, was sent on a one-night, really simple blog trip to Liverpool. Okay, so it's a tropical trip. And she was there in a new hotel, which is, it doesn't have too many windows. It's more about the quality of the room inside and go out and explore the city. That's the approach. So she did. She wrote about it as being things like high heel approved. It's easy to walk around to get everywhere. So that's sort of personal information. She's writing more from a personal angle. People know her as somebody who can write about Liverpool and writes honestly. She had 70 followers on Facebook. It's just 70. Yet an engagement level of 30%. Not many thousands of readers of the blog every month. Yet the next month after she went there, immediately somebody bought a hotel, bought a room night. And that's a fantastic return with a high engagement level. And if you put those two things together, and if you perhaps approached Helen, it's a lot easier for her to then market that and recommend that to her client. Does that make sense?
And also probably as well, it's degree of investment required from the client. If it's if it's a long haul trip requiring flight, X number of nights accommodation, then you will be looking for, because you're already making that investment, you will be looking for a bigger audience. If it's, as Oliver says, one night in a UK hotel where that room might not have been sold anyway, then there's, as long as it's relevant, there's probably more of an opportunity there. So it really depends on who you're pitching to as well.
Okay.
Like Laura mentioned before, I mean, if you are small, you start with the small things, like, tickets for an attraction or something, to build that and build your audience. So, and you build these stories. I mean, what happened afterwards?
It's a good point. Good point. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending, for listening, and for being patient. You can find me in the Fox in about 15 minutes' time. That's just outside. I'll look forward to that drink the last lady is going to be buying me. Thank you. In terms of connecting with bloggers, well, there's all sorts of ways around that. So what I'd like to do for everybody that's attended all the sessions, not just those that are pertinent today, if you ever want to email me, I'm oliver@travelbloggersunite.com. It's really easy to find. You don't have to Google too far. And what I'd like to do is just have a think about the process of how I can connect brands to bloggers and the resources I can recommend you to, the associations and such. And I'd like to distribute that information to not just this room, but to everybody. So if you want to email me privately, you can do. It's Oliver@ And if you'd like to leave your business card, I'm going to send you all the slides, all the relevant information, etc., etc. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming, and have a good journey home. Thank you.